If you're drowning in reports, meeting notes, and customer feedback, and you don't have time to read and analyze all of it, you're not alone. Even ChatGPT doesn't help much unless you spoon feed it the context every time you ask it a question. That's why this upgraded system, Agentic RAG, is the solution to your problems. I'm gonna show you exactly how to set this up for your business in just a couple minutes. But let's go ahead and start having a conversation with this agent. And let's say something like, what was the total sales volume from these 10 weeks? Now, traditionally, large language models are not good at doing any sort of math, but the way that it's doing this is it actually generated this SQL query that you see here. So if you're familiar with SQL, it's a way to analyze data. And so it ran this query here that we see that actually went into this document and found the relevant data based on the question that I asked and answered it properly. So now let's try to see if we can grab some very specific insights that we had from our meeting. So we're going to ask, what are the action items from the Q1 meeting? And so we can see which tools were actually called to answer this. But let's see, the action items from the Q1 meeting are these things: CRM cleanup, lead goal set, new submarket data. Let's check this out. We see that the action items in this Q1 meeting are in fact the CRM cleanup, lead goal set, new submarket, T1 report, and office layout proposal. So we can see that that does match up, and I'll explain why it was able to do that more accurately later on in this video. Let's see if it can analyze trends from our list of documents. So we're going to ask this question: for which submarket should we pay attention to based on these couple factors? So based on favorable new construction and vacancy rates, you may want to pay attention to the following submarkets. And we can see here where it actually got access to that. So it sent a query to our vector store for favorable new construction and vacancy rates. And so when we see these results, we might ask which file it actually went into. And so it looked through all of our data and it found that this was the most relevant data for what we had asked. And so it grabbed the actual vacancy rates for Pasadena, for San Fernando Valley, and for Long Beach. And you can see these numbers do match exactly what was written here. So you can imagine, as a business owner that has a ton of data, a ton of different factors to look through, and that has data that's constantly changing, you'd want to have something like this set up on your files so that this can run on a particular folder. And as you update files, remove files, change numbers in your spreadsheets, it can grab what's most relevant for you. So you can ask it the big picture questions like, what should we pay attention to? Similarly, I'm going to ask this question for what trends are most relevant for our business. So this is quite a high level question, something you'd probably ask the owner or the director of a business, but you can ask it to this AI assistant and it can give you a very, very intelligent answer. And so it can say the most relevant trends for your business include adaptive reuse, sustainability incentives, demographic trends, hybrid work, e-commerce evolution, and the integration of global trade. And so we can see where it likely got some of these things is a combination of a few different reports, probably from this document right here. One thing I'd recommend as you are using this is to be able to play with the different models to see how you get different results. So in my testing, I've tried out the difference between O1 and 4.0. O1 is OpenAI's reasoning model, so it takes more time. There's more thought that goes into the answer. 4.0 is a lot quicker. For more complex, high-level questions like this, I would recommend using O1. So now that we've changed this to the O1 model, let's go ahead and check how this performs and how this responds a little bit differently as a very, very broad question that you'd like to know: how can we do better as a business? This takes a little bit longer to execute, but you'll find that the results are a lot more well thought out. And so it's taking some time. Based on the meeting notes and initiatives outlined in your Q1 and Q2 summaries, here are some concrete ways to strengthen the business: improve collaboration, reinforce CRM hygiene, strengthen marketing and outreach. And it gives very tactical insights on what you can do as a business. Invest in culture and recognition, enhance tools and technology. So you can see this is a pretty well thought out answer. So I recommend playing around with and switch between O1 and 4.0, depending on the types of questions that you'd like to use for this RAG AI agent. But hopefully that makes sense. It's trained on your business documents, your spreadsheets, your files, all of your meeting notes. And it can instantly answer questions, summarize information, and even do data analysis all for you. And the best part, it's always working on the most up-to-date version of your files. So it has the latest context anytime you ask it a question. Now, maybe you've already tried using ChatGPT to answer questions about your business. You might have tried asking it questions like, what were our sales last month? Or what are customers complaining most about? Or what was said in last week's meeting? And if you've tried it, you've probably gotten an underwhelming experience. The AI either gave a vague answer or it just did not have the context to answer correctly. That's because most AI tools rely on something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. It sounds fancy, but on its own, it does not get the job done. Traditional RAG just pulls in random snippets from the files that you give it. It doesn't understand full documents, it doesn't analyze spreadsheets, and it doesn't have any sort of reasoning capabilities about which tool or which action to take. That's why this upgraded system, Agentic RAG, is the solution to your problems. It has the ability to reason with our AI agent and then decide what actions to take. And there are multiple tools that we've put into this agent to allow it to do more complex tasks like data analysis and looking at the full context of a file, grabbing multiple files to answer a more complex question. This AI agent can act like a smart assistant that actually knows your business inside and out. So looking more broadly at this setup, I want to take a minute to shout out Cole Medin for being the author of this template, the originator of this template. He has a great explanation of how this template works step by step over on his channel. And he also shares this resource completely for free as well. And so what I did is I took this as a starting point, messed around with it, did testing, and then modified it a bit to help you all use this even more effectively in your business. So what we are going to do now is walk through this setup, and I'm going to show you how this is a little bit different and how you can go ahead and copy and paste this for your business so that you can actually start to leverage the benefits of this Agentic RAG setup. So the first thing to note is that this entire setup is available for free in my resource hub if you check out the link down below. And so when you download this in the resource hub, you can go ahead and click import from file and then select the file that you just downloaded and have this completely uploaded. So you don't have to worry about this whole setup, all of its complexities. I will just explain how to start plugging this in for your business so that you can actually get going and start using this today. So the first thing is when you upload this to your N8N account, you're going to want to connect all of your credentials. The main thing being your Postgres and Supabase account and the Postgres and Supabase setup. So you're going to want to go to Supabase and create a brand new project and go through the connection steps here to actually connect it to your N8N instance. So I'm going to link the video that I have walking through this process. It's just a few simple steps. There's also docs on it, but I recommend checking out the video that I've made for this to connect your Postgres and Supabase within your N8N instance. So what you're going to want to do is run each one of these nodes once in order to create your database tables. And so I've done that. And so I have these tables right here for document metadata and document rows. So shout out to Cole for actually making these modules so simple to run. He's actually put in all of the code here, so we don't even have to write anything. He's created these tables and the schemas for them. And so once we do that, we have the schemas created in our Supabase project. Now we get into the RAG pipeline, which is really where all of the nuances come in. So this template is really great for storing different file types. But one thing that I noticed is it wasn't able to handle folders or subfolders within the root folder that you'd like to search. And so if you have a folder that you're searching from, then within that folder, there might be another folder like you have here. For business documents, there might be folders within folders within folders within folders. And so we need to have some sort of a loop to check whether it's a file or a folder. If it's a file, we can go through the process of actually adding it to our database, getting it ready, knowing what type of data it is, and then passing it into our database. Otherwise, we have to open up that folder, double click that folder, check all the files within it, and then if those are all files, then pass them through and essentially pass the files through to the true side where it actually goes in, adds them. And then if it's false, that means it is again a folder. And so we want to go through this until we get to the root, to the files within each one of these folders. So hopefully that makes sense. I've just added that logic. So the intention is you can take your current business documents, which are likely folders within folders, and just upload the root folder here at this step to search this root folder. So my root folder is test chatbot data. That's what's here. This is my root folder. So imagine if this was my business, I was just going to put all the documents here, and that could be folders, files, etc., a mixture. And then when you click test workflow, that's essentially the initiation of the knowledge. So it's going to search through that entire root folder, and it's going to pass everything to this condition to check whether it's a file or a folder. So if it's a folder, then it's going to pass to here. If it's a file, it's pass up here. Now, what's so amazing, if I mentioned at the beginning of this video, every time you update a file or create a new file, those things are also being accounted for here, where if their new file is created or a new file is updated, this is still going to trigger this entire workflow. It's going to look at the changes that have been created. It's going to remove the old data and it's going to update it with the new data. We have this function called an upsearch, so an update or an insert. So if it's a new document, it's going to insert. If it's an old document with new data, it's going to update the data. And here we have this switch statement, which is a really critical step because it allows us to determine what type of a file we're actually working with, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a .xlsx, or it's a CSV, or it's a Google Doc. And then based on that, it's going to extract the proper information depending on the type that it is. Now for tabular data, for spreadsheets, this workflow is set up amazingly to actually aggregate the data from this Excel or CSV files and summarize that data and pass it into our metadata. Now let me go ahead and run all of this with the test chatbot data so you can actually see what this looks like and how effective this really is. Awesome, so we can see that this just ran and we can see that it found 8 different files. One of them was a folder and had to send back, it had to search that folder, find 2 files within that folder. So in this case, we know our test chatbot data has a folder called meeting notes and there are 2 files within it. So that all checks out in terms of this folder returning back 2 different items. As we can see here, the 2 different items in this table. And then we pass that back to our condition. This time it was a file. So then it goes ahead and passes that into our loop and goes through the rest of the steps. Now in terms of the breakdown of file types, we've had 3 PDFs in this, 2 PDFs here, 1 PDF here, so that's 3 that should have been classified as PDFs. That's correct. 1 file that is a .xlsx, that is right here. That's an Excel file. 2 CSV files and 2 Google Docs. So we have 2 CSV files right here, and then we have 2 Google Docs right here. So this completely checks out. It's clear that everything was added to our database, and as soon as we refresh and see the new data that was in here, now we get so much more insight into what was actually given. And so what's amazing about this setup is that it stores the metadata for the particular files, which means that there's URLs to the files, which means the agent can actually cite the files if you'd like. There's schema for the files that are spreadsheets. There's an actual schema that's here that outlines the columns in the spreadsheet, so we know what the spreadsheet is about. So whenever we run a query into the chatbot and it looks at all the documents in the files, the file contents, it's going through the metadata and it's actually looking at the schema, so it has more context. It's not just breaking it into chunks without context of the other pieces. It actually has context on where it's from and what that document is about, how that document is structured. So it's able to more accurately decide which pieces of information to use in the final answer. So that's it for this video. Go ahead and download this workflow to actually start using this with your data to see how effective this can be for your business. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.